Have you ever witnessed a moment so simple, so quiet, that it shattered an entire belief you once thought was true? What if I told you that a child from a small coastal town in the Philippines once stepped onto an international stage where no one expected her to shine, and within minutes, she left an entire auditorium silent, stunned, and standing on their feet? Do you believe that a single voice, soft and almost trembling, could rewrite how the world talks about Filipino children and the English language? It sounds unbelievable. After all, for years, outsiders whispered the same old line. Filipino kids cannot speak English like native speakers. Filipino English is broken. Filipino English is only good for singing, not for competing. Those words floated around like a shadow, repeated by people who never once set foot in a barangay school, or looked a Filipino child in the eyes, or listened to the way their curiosity lights up a room. They said it so casually that it almost felt like a fact carved into stone. And yet, the moment I am about to share with you began with something so small you might miss it if you weren't paying attention. A judge from Europe, stern and famously difficult to impress, leaned forward in his seat. It happened so subtly that even the people beside him did not notice. But in that fraction of a second, before he even realized it, he had dropped his pen, not out of shock or carelessness. He dropped it because he forgot he was supposed to be judging. For the first time that afternoon, he was simply listening. That was the beginning of the story of Liana Cruz, a 12-year-old girl from Cebu, who never imagined she would stand in front of hundreds of people from all over the world. She was not the top student in her school. She was not the child whose parents could afford tutors or language training. She learned English by reading the same old books her grandmother kept in a wooden chest that smelled like rain and time. She learned English from the Sunday homilies she listened to with wide eyes, copying the rhythm of the priest's voice. She learned English the way most Filipino kids do, not through expensive classes, but through life itself. Yet none of that seemed significant on the morning she arrived at the International English Storytelling Competition in Singapore. The hall was enormous, bright, intimidating. Children from private academies wore uniforms that looked like they were pressed by professionals. Their accents flowed like practiced rivers. Some of them had teachers hovering nearby, fixing their collars, repeating their rehearsed lines. Liana stood quietly beside her mother, holding a paper she had folded and unfolded so many times that the edges had begun to soften. Why would a child like her even dare to compete against kids who trained for years? Why would she step into a space where people already assumed she would fail? Maybe the answer lies in the way her mother touched her shoulder before she went backstage. It was a simple gesture, light, almost fragile, but something about that touch carried an unspoken truth. It said, "You are here because you deserve to be here." It said, "You do not need to sound like them to be worthy." It said, "Speak the way you were taught to speak, with sincerity." There is something uniquely Filipino about that kind of faith. Quiet but unshakable. As Liana waited for her turn, she overheard a conversation between two adults behind her. Their voices weren't cruel, just factual, in a cold academic way. One of them said, "Children from Southeast Asia tend to struggle with vocal clarity in English." The other added, "Their speech often lacks natural confidence." And then came the line that felt like a pin dropped into her stomach. Filipino kids especially. They rely too much on memorization. They were not speaking to her. They were not trying to offend. They simply believed what they believed. Still, it stung. She felt her heartbeat slip into the pause between every breath she took. She wondered whether she truly belonged there. The lights, the polished floors, the heavy curtains, the rhythmic footsteps of contestants, all of it pressed in on her like a reminder that she was the outsider in the room. But then she remembered something her grandmother once told her. When you speak from the heart, the words will find their way. She did not understand what it meant then. But as she stood alone, surrounded by children who seemed so much more prepared, The memory flickered like a candle. Perhaps that was enough to steady her. When her name was called, the room did not react. There was no applause louder than usual, no murmurs of excitement. She was just another contestant walking toward the microphone. Her shoes tapped lightly against the floor. Her hair moved gently with each step. She held no aura of confidence, no polished bravado. To the crowd, she was forgettable. But the moment she began speaking, something unspoken shifted. It wasn't her grammar. It wasn't her accent. It wasn't even the story she told. It was the way she paused on certain words, as if she wanted the room to breathe with her. It was the way her voice softened on the emotional lines, not because she was trained, but because she felt them. It was the way her eyes held sincerity, not performance. Her English wasn't perfect, but it was real. And in a competition where perfection was expected, authenticity was the surprise no one saw coming. That was the moment the European judge leaned forward. That was the moment the murmurs in the back row suddenly stopped. That was the moment something in the room loosened, as if the story itself had reached out and held everyone still. And it all began with one truth the world often forgets. Filipino children grow up surrounded by stories, languages, and emotions that shape their voice long before they ever step onto a stage. As Liana continued speaking, the entire hall listened. Not because she sounded like a native speaker, not because she delivered her lines flawlessly, but because her voice carried something deeper, something that made even the most skeptical listener wonder if they had been wrong all along. And in that quiet, charged space, where doubt hung in the air like mist waiting to be lifted, her journey was only beginning. Long before anyone applauded her, long before the judges leaned in or the lights warmed her face, Liana was simply a child growing up in a neighborhood where afternoons smelled like the sea and the sound of laughter carried across narrow alleyways. She was the kind of girl people described gently, as if afraid of startling her. Quiet, but observant. Soft, spoken, but thoughtful. She had a habit of watching the world with an attentiveness that seemed unusual for her age, like she was listening for something most people overlooked. Her father worked nights, loading delivery trucks, and her mother cleaned rooms at a small pension house not far from their home. They didn't have the luxury of expensive lessons or private tutors. What they did have was an unshakable belief that their daughter was capable of more than she realized. They encouraged her curiosity, even when the world seemed ready to dismiss it. People often asked why she enjoyed English so much. She would smile shyly and say she liked how the words flowed, how they felt like waves moving in and out of meaning. But the truth was simpler. English was the language of the stories her grandmother read to her when the electricity went out. Stories of saints who gave up everything for compassion. Stories of fishermen who braved storms for family. Stories of ordinary Filipinos whose courage glowed quietly in the dark. In those moments, she learned something without anyone having to tell her. Language was not about perfection. It was about connection. When she finally arrived in Singapore for the competition, she carried all of that with her, even if she did not fully understand it. The city felt overwhelming at first, with its tall buildings and polished sidewalks. She saw children her age, speaking confidently, dressed in outfits that looked like they belonged in magazines. They walked with a practiced certainty that made her wonder if they had ever doubted themselves. Liana felt small, but she was not intimidated. Instead, she felt something else stirring inside her, something soft yet persistent. It was not pride, not exactly. It was a quiet sense of belonging she did not know how to explain. She was far from home, yet she felt the presence of the Philippines in every heartbeat, every breath, every memory of the people who had shaped her. Before her turn, she watched 3 contestants go up to the stage. One boy from Canada spoke with flawless confidence, his words crisp and almost too polished. A girl from South Korea recited her story with a steady, trained voice. Another from Australia delivered a dramatic piece that earned murmurs of approval from the crowd. Liana admired them. She really did. But as she listened, something unexpected dawned on her. Each performance was sharp and perfect, like a gemstone with no imperfections. But they felt distant, rehearsed, almost mechanical. They were beautiful, but they did not breathe. That was when her mother leaned down and whispered something she had heard many times at home. Just be yourself. Say it the way you feel it, the way Filipinos always do. It calmed her more than she expected. The first few seconds on stage felt like walking through fog. She could barely see the judges' faces. The microphone felt unusually cold in her hand. Yet, as she began to speak, she noticed something strange. Instead of focusing on her fear, she began noticing small details around her. A woman in the front row, adjusting her glasses, the faint echo of air conditioning humming through the hall, the way the lights shimmered on the floor like reflections on the ocean she grew up beside. Those details grounded her, and she understood something she had never realized before. She was not performing. She was sharing a story. A Filipino child, speaking the way Filipino children speak when no one is judging them. As the story unfolded from her lips, she did not try to sound like anyone else. She allowed her natural cadence to guide her. She allowed her emotions to shape her pauses. Every word she spoke carried traces of home, and though she didn't know it then, that was precisely what made the room lean in toward her. Meanwhile, backstage, her mother watched through the small slit between the curtains. She wasn't thinking about winning. She wasn't thinking about proving anything to the world. She was thinking about the little girl who used to sit by the window reading aloud, stumbling through difficult passages, laughing every time she mispronounced a word. It was in that moment that her mother saw something change on stage. It wasn't dramatic. It wasn't loud. It was simply the way Liana lifted her chin slightly as she spoke, as if an invisible weight had loosened from her shoulders, as if she believed, maybe for the first time, that her voice mattered. But the story that truly shaped her journey began earlier that morning, during a simple exchange she didn't think much of at the time. While checking in at the registration table, she had bumped into an elderly man with a name tag identifying him as one of the senior adjudicators. He looked at her, then at her mother, and softly asked, "Are you from the Philippines?" When she nodded, he smiled. A warm, unexpected smile that softened the lines around his eyes. "The world needs more Filipino voices," he said. "Do not underestimate what yours can do." At that moment, she only nodded politely, though she didn't understand the weight of his words. But the memory lingered in the back of her mind like a quiet blessing. And now, as she spoke on stage, it resurfaced, wrapping around her like a gentle reminder. After all, Filipino English is not just a skill taught in classrooms. It is a reflection of history, culture, and resilience. It is shaped by fishermen whispering prayers before dawn, by teachers in overcrowded classrooms giving lessons with more dedication than resources, by church choirs singing hymns that blend English with Visayan or Tagalog, creating melodies that carry both faith and identity. When she reached the middle of her piece, her voice grew stronger without her realizing it. Her hands stopped trembling, her breathing steadied. The room felt strangely intimate, despite the hundreds of eyes watching her. It was as if the world outside had faded away, leaving only a child and her story. And somewhere in that gentle rising of her confidence, the first shift occurred. A quiet transformation, subtle but undeniable, like dawn slowly brightening the horizon. Her journey was far from over. The most powerful moment hadn't arrived yet, but something within her had begun to awaken. And it was only a matter of time before the world noticed it too. There is always a single moment in every story when the world seems to pause, as if holding its breath for something it didn't expect. For Liana, that moment came halfway through her performance, when she reached a line that she had practiced countless times at home, but had never fully understood until she spoke it under those bright, foreign lights. The line was simple. Sometimes, courage is quiet. Sometimes it hides in the smallest voice, yet when she spoke it, her voice trembled with a sincerity that no coaching, no training, no textbook could ever teach. And in that instant, the room shifted again. A subtle tightening of the air, a soft stillness, like the hush that comes before a sunrise. People leaned forward, not because they wanted to judge, but because they wanted to understand what that trembling voice was trying to tell them. From the back row, one of the younger judges glanced at the older adjudicator beside him. The older man had removed his glasses. It was such a small gesture, yet it carried an almost reverent weight. He was not analyzing anymore. He was witnessing. Inside Liana, a different kind of awakening began to unfurl. She didn't realize she was changing. She didn't know that something inside her was breaking open in the gentlest way. All she knew was that each sentence felt easier to speak. Each idea found its rhythm. Each pause carried meaning. Yet even in that blossoming strength, something unexpected happened. A momentary flicker, a mispronounced word. It slipped from her tongue and landed wrong. A tiny mistake, so small it could have been ignored. But on a stage where every syllable is measured, where every competitor fights for perfection, even a minor stumble can feel like a collapse. For a split second, she froze. Her breath caught. Her eyes darted toward the judges, searching for disappointment. Her mind began to swirl with doubt. Every insecurity she had buried surfaced with startling speed. They said Filipino kids couldn't speak English well. They said children like her only memorized phrases. They said her voice would never match the trained clarity of others. For a heartbeat, she believed them. But then something remarkable happened. It began with a sound barely audible from where she stood. Her mother, still hidden behind the curtain, whispered her name. Not loudly, not urgently, just a gentle call, almost like a prayer carried by the wind. It anchored her. Then, as if guided by something she could not see, her eyes drifted to the audience. In the middle rows sat a Filipino family who had traveled from Malaysia to watch the competition. She didn't know them, but their presence felt strangely familiar. The father sat upright, his hands clasped together. The mother held a toddler who had fallen asleep on her shoulder. But it was the teenage daughter beside them who caught Liana's attention. She nodded softly. Once, as if to say, "It's all right. Keep going." That single nod steadied her more than she expected. It reminded her of home, of community, of the quiet strength Filipinos offer to anyone who stands alone. She took a slow breath. Then, another. The trembling eased, and she continued. But this time, something changed. Her voice didn't just carry words. It carried intention. It carried the weight of every Filipino child who had ever been underestimated. It carried the memory of her grandmother reading stories by candlelight. It carried the unspoken dedication of teachers who, despite limited resources, teach with passion that rivals the world's best educators. As she spoke, her story wove itself into the room like a living thread. She talked about a child discovering her voice in unexpected places. A child who realized that stories have the power to travel across oceans. A child who learned that the beauty of language is not in flawless delivery but in honest expression. Her English was not perfect, but perfection no longer mattered. What mattered was truth. And the judges felt it. The audience felt it. Even the technical team backstage felt it. It was the kind of authenticity that makes people look inward, questioning their assumptions, reevaluating their quiet biases. It was the kind of sincerity that turns a performance into a moment. By the time she reached the final paragraph, something almost spiritual lingered in the air. Not dramatic, not loud, just a tender stillness that wrapped itself around everyone present. But the most powerful shift hadn't happened on stage. It happened inside her. For the first time, she felt no fear in her voice, no hesitation, no need to compare herself to anyone else. She wasn't trying to win. She wasn't trying to prove anything. Her voice simply belonged there, and she felt it, deeply, with a conviction that surprised her. As she spoke the final line, her eyes softened. Her breathing steadied. She felt an unexpected warmth rising from her chest, like the quiet glow of a candle being lit after a long night. When she finished, the hall did not erupt immediately. There was a moment of silence, pure, unbroken silence, the kind that does not come from confusion, but from awe. And then the applause began. Not loud at first, not explosive. It started as a soft wave, like the first ripple in a lake. Then it grew, expanding through the hall, gathering strength until it became a resonant, rising thunder of appreciation. People stood. Judges nodded. A few exchanged glances, acknowledging something unspoken. It wasn't applause for a perfect performance. It was applause for a child who found her voice and allowed the world to hear it. Backstage, her mother pressed a hand to her mouth, tears welling in her eyes but refusing to fall. She wasn't crying out of pride, though pride was there. She cried because she recognized the expression on her daughter's face. It was the look of someone who had finally realized her own worth. As Liana took her bow, she didn't know what the scores would be. She didn't know whether she had done enough to win, but she knew something far more important. She knew she had spoken honestly. She knew she had connected. She knew she had stood in a room filled with doubt and turned that doubt into something close to admiration. And in that moment, even if she didn't understand the full magnitude of it, something had shifted in the world's perception of Filipino children and the English language. But one moment still awaited her, a moment more powerful than applause, a moment that would leave not just the audience, but even the judges profoundly moved. A moment that would reveal the true heart of this story. Long after the applause faded, long after the other contestants returned to their seats, whispering about their own scores and performances, Liana remained backstage, standing very still, her small hands folded together, as if she were afraid to loosen them. The air behind the curtains felt different. Heavier, somehow. Warmer. It was as if the stage lights had left behind a lingering glow, soft but unmistakable, wrapping around her like a quiet embrace. She did not hear her mother step toward her until warm arms gently circled her shoulders. Her mother didn't speak. She didn't need to. The embrace alone told a story, one filled with pride and tenderness, and something deeper too, an unspoken gratitude for the courage her daughter had just shown. But even in that moment of stillness, another presence approached. Footsteps, measured, deliberate, almost ceremonial. Liana turned and saw the older adjudicator, the same man who had encouraged her earlier that morning. Now, standing only a few steps away, he looked at her as if he were seeing something rare, something precious. He did not offer praise in the way adults usually do. Instead, he asked softly, "Do you know what you just did out there?" His voice carried no grandeur, no dramatic flair. It was simply honest. She shook her head. "You reminded us why storytelling exists. You made us listen with our hearts." Liana lowered her eyes, unsure how to respond. Compliments were always difficult for her to absorb. She never felt comfortable taking up space, never felt worthy of such attention. But the adjudicator wasn't finished. "Perfection has become a prison for many children today," he said. "Yet you brought sincerity into that room, and sincerity is far more powerful than perfection." For a moment, his words hung in the air like a gentle echo. And then, quietly, he walked away, leaving Liana with a weight she could feel but not yet understand. Shortly after, all contestants were called backstage for the announcement of finalists. The room quickly filled with nervous energy. Some students practiced their smiles in case they won. Others whispered anxiously in their parents' ears. Liana stood quietly beside her mother, her heartbeat steady but curious. She had never expected to win anything. She simply hoped she had not embarrassed herself or her country. When the host finally stepped on stage with the sealed envelope, a hush fell over the hall. The man's voice echoed clearly, each word slicing through the tension. In third place, a girl from South Korea. Polite claps. In second place, the boy from Canada. Stronger applause. And then came the longest pause of the afternoon. Before I announce the top award, the judge said, I want to acknowledge something. Today, one performance reminded us that language is not measured solely by technical skill, but by the humanity of the voice behind it. The world often wonders if children from certain countries can truly master English. But today, one child delivered a message that transcended that question entirely. A subtle shifting of bodies, an electric anticipation. The first place award goes to another pause, excruciatingly slow. From the Philippines, the hall erupted. Liana did not realize her name was being called until her mother's hand gently pushed her forward. Her legs felt numb, almost weightless, as if they belonged to someone else. She walked toward the stage, surrounded by applause that crashed like waves rolling toward shore. The noise felt overwhelming, yet strangely distant, as though she were underwater, hearing the world through softened echoes. When she stood in front of the judges, the senior adjudicator handed her a small golden plaque. His hands were steady, but his eyes glistened with something close to pride. When you spoke, he told her quietly, you carried more than your story. You carried your people. The words settled deep inside her. She felt a sudden sting behind her eyes. Not quite tears, but something close. She held them back, breathing slowly through the weight of the moment. Reporters approached her after the ceremony. Cameras flashed. Microphones were lifted toward her from every direction. They asked her how she felt. They asked if she expected to win. They asked what made her story so moving. Liana answered, as simply as she could. Always polite, always humble, always soft-spoken. One reporter, a woman with a crisp accent, asked a question no one else had considered. How did you learn English so well? For the first time, Liana hesitated, not because she didn't know the answer, but because the answer felt too ordinary, too simple for the grandeur of the moment. Finally, she replied, my grandmother read stories to me. That was it. That was the whole truth. She also spoke of her mother, of teachers who encouraged her, of neighbors who shared books. She mentioned all the small, everyday things that taught her English without her realizing it. But the reporter was unsatisfied. She smiled politely, waiting for more, waiting for some secret formula or advanced academic training, as though Filipino children could only excel if they were exceptional in ways the world understood. But there was no secret. There never had been. Later, as contestants exited the hall, a young boy from Australia approached her. He bowed his head slightly, an unexpectedly respectful gesture. Your voice, he said quietly. It made me feel something. I didn't expect that. Liana smiled. Thank you. He looked around, as if making sure no one heard him, then leaned in. Before today, I didn't think someone from the Philippines would win. I was wrong. His honesty surprised her, but it also stirred something in her chest, something that felt like a small flame flickering against the wind. Yet, even after all the praise, all the congratulations, all the astonished whispers, the most unforgettable moment of that day came long after the hall had emptied. As the sun dipped low, painting the city in shades of gold and coral, Liana and her mother stopped by a quiet bench outside the venue. There, for the first time since the announcement, they allowed themselves to breathe, to sit in silence, to feel the weight of everything that had just happened. Liana placed the golden plaque on her lap. She traced its engraved letters slowly, almost tenderly. Her mother watched her, eyes reflecting the soft evening light. Do you know what this means? Her mother asked. Liana shook her head again. Her mother reached out, touched her chin, and gently lifted her gaze. It means they heard you, Anak. Not for how perfectly you spoke, but for how truly. Liana held that thought in her chest, letting it settle into the spaces where doubt once lived. Yet she did not know that the night still held one final moment for her. A moment that would strike deeper than applause, deeper than victory, and would become the memory she would carry for the rest of her life. A moment waiting quietly just around the corner, ready to transform everything she thought she understood. Night had already settled over the city when the final and most unexpected moment arrived. The heat of the afternoon had faded into a gentle coolness, and the building where the competition had taken place now stood quiet, its lights dimmed, its corridors emptied of laughter and footsteps. Only a few people remained outside, waiting for rides or taking last pictures to mark the day. Liana and her mother sat on the bench a few steps from the entrance, still letting the enormity of everything settle around them like mist. For the first time since stepping onto the stage, Liana finally allowed herself to relax. But relaxation brought a different kind of vulnerability. She felt a strange weight in her chest, not sadness, not fear, but something like the overwhelming awareness of standing at the edge of a moment that might change who she was forever. Her mother brushed a few strands of hair from her face. "You did well, Anak. You made us proud." Liana nodded but said nothing. She kept her eyes on the ground, watching the slow movement of people leaving the venue. It was then that she noticed someone approaching. A tall man in a long, dark coat, carrying a folder under his arm. He moved with an air of quiet dignity, his steps careful, deliberate. When he came close enough, she recognized him instantly. It was the senior adjudicator. He greeted her mother with a respectful nod, then turned his attention to Liana. His expression was kind but serious, as though he had come with something important to say, something he could not leave unsaid. "I hope I am not disturbing your evening," he said. "May I sit for a moment?" Her mother nodded, and the man lowered himself gently onto the bench beside them. For a moment, none of them spoke. The city hummed softly in the distance. A faint breeze carried the scent of food from a nearby stall. The world felt strangely intimate, as though the three of them existed inside their own quiet pocket of time. Finally, he exhaled deeply. "I have judged competitions for more than 20 years, he began. "I have listened to children from every corner of the world. I have heard flawless speakers, confident orators, technically perfect performers. But today," he paused, searching for the right words. "Today, do you know," he continued, "that before every competition, we judges receive notes, little guidelines, comments about general language abilities from different regions." He paused again, the weight of his next words hanging heavily between them. The notes for Southeast Asian contestants were not kind, especially the ones about Filipino children. Her mother stiffened slightly, though she tried not to show it. Liana's eyes widened, but she remained still. "There is this belief," the adjudicator said slowly, "that your children speak English only functionally. That confidence is lacking. That expression is limited. Many think your voices are shaped only by imitation." He shook his head gently. "But today, you dismantled that belief. Quietly, softly, completely." Liana felt something warm bloom beneath her ribs, something fragile, something new. She didn't know whether it was pride or disbelief or a mixture of both. She only knew the adjudicator's words touched a place she had never realized needed affirmation. The man opened the folder he was holding. Inside was a printed sheet, their final evaluation, but instead of handing it to her, he showed her only one line. It was written in his own handwriting, the most authentic voice of the competition. Liana blinked, unsure how to respond. "You taught us," he said, "that English is not owned by one country or one accent or one standard. You reminded us that language lives inside the storyteller, not the judge." Her mother exhaled gently, her eyes shimmering in the dim light. Then, something even more unexpected happened. The adjudicator's voice softened, and he leaned slightly closer, speaking with a reverence that surprised them. "Filipino children," he said slowly. "They have something the world forgets to measure, something more powerful than refined pronunciation, something deeper than formal training. Your children have heart. It is heard in every word you speak." He paused, then added with quiet conviction, "And that is why the world needs to hear more of you." Liana looked down at her hands. For so long, she had believed her voice was small, ordinary, a voice that blended into the noise of everyday life. But now, sitting on a simple bench in a foreign city, she realized how wrong she had been. Her voice had carried across a hall of strangers. It had softened biases, challenged expectations, and moved listeners who had never known her or her story. It had traveled further than she ever thought possible. Just then, a family approached a Filipino couple with 2 children. They had attended the competition and recognized her as she sat there on the bench. The mother held the hand of her younger child, who shyly stepped forward. "Are you the girl who won first place?" the little boy asked softly. Liana hesitated, then nodded. The boy smiled, wide and innocent. "Someday, I want to speak English like you." It was a simple statement, but it pierced her heart with unexpected force, because she knew what he meant. He didn't want to sound perfect. He didn't want to imitate another culture. He wanted to speak with courage, with sincerity, with the kind of truth she had carried onto that stage. The mother placed a gentle hand on her son's shoulder. "You inspired him," she said. "You inspired all of us." And there, in that quiet corner of Singapore, framed by streetlights and soft evening air, the realization finally settled over Liana like a warm blanket. This was never about winning. It was about showing the world something they had forgotten. That Filipino children possess a depth of expression the world rarely takes time to see. That their English carries traces of their history, their faith, their resilience, that their voices rise from classrooms where teachers sacrifice daily, from families who speak with tenderness, from communities shaped by struggle and hope. It was about proving without anger, without defiance, only with truth that they had been underestimated for far too long. As they stood to leave, the adjudicator touched his chest lightly in a gesture of respect. "The Philippines should be proud," he said. "Very proud." Walking back to their small hotel, Liana held the plaque close to her chest. The city lights reflected off its surface, shimmering like tiny stars. Her mother walked beside her, silent but glowing with pride that needed no words. And Liana understood something profound. A child from a humble town had stepped onto a stage far from home. She carried not only her story, but the unspoken stories of millions of Filipino children whose voices deserved to be heard. She reminded the world that greatness does not always come from perfection. Often, it comes from sincerity, courage, and a heart shaped by the Filipino spirit. And as they reached the quiet doorway of their hotel, her mother whispered the final words of the night. "You didn't just win, anak. You changed something." Liana looked up at the sky, the same sky she knew back home, and realized her mother was right. She had changed something, not just in the competition, not just in the minds of the judges, but in the way the world would speak about Filipino children from this day forward.